Hey everyone, this is Robert Keynes from goldsilverpros.com, and I have a very special guest today, Brien Lundin, who's hosting the 2020 New Orleans Investment Conference, coming up here October 14th through 17th next week. Brien, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Robert. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Great to be on your show.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I have listened to a lot of the content from previous conferences, and I can say that it's extremely helpful, especially if you're looking to get into the mining sector, but also looking to get some information on the direction of the economy and what's going on. I know that you have a great lineup of guests, and there's a ton of information at this conference. And unlike some other conferences, you have a very broad, I guess, remit or what you're looking at in terms of providing people information. So wanted to thank you for that. And I guess we'll get started by talking about what's going on in the general economy. I know that we've had near 0% interest rates, and it seems like the Fed is wanting to quantitative easing forever. What are your thoughts on that in terms of how it's affecting the overall economy?
Thank you for that introduction. You're right. We do have this legacy of focusing on geopolitics at the conference, and then, economics, and then drilling down to the various asset sectors. Of course, being the conference that was created to teach investors how to invest in gold back in the early 70s, we have always had that as one of our key mandates to cover the metals and the mining sector. And of course, Jim Blanchard started the whole thing. He was the original gold bug and helped get gold legalized. So we've always tried to do that, and we're trying to do that again this year. But it's an extraordinary year. You look at what the Federal Reserve has done, what central banks across the world have done. They've taken all of the unprecedented steps that they took post 2008 and made them more unprecedented. And they've taken the programs that they introduced back then, and they've accelerated them, both in time and degree, and come up with new clever ways to add liquidity and stimulus to the economy, and all of this central planning that is not unlike, and in fact, eerily similar to what's happened throughout history, in that debts get too large, you have crises, and the currency has to be debased. The difference today, of course, is that every economy in the world is in the same boat. Every currency is being debased at the same time. They're all racing to the bottom of the hill. So they have to be debased against real things, primarily gold and silver. And that's the process we see happening right now. I was telling somebody earlier today that what's interesting is that the future that we can see just ahead, days or even weeks, in gold is the most unclear, is the most uncertain. Nobody really knows what gold is going to do next week, tomorrow, even later today. But if we look a year or two down the road, we can be very certain, or fairly certain, that gold and silver prices are going to be much higher. So these dips and jogs in the price line on the way up in this bull market environment, you have to look at them as buying opportunities and chances perhaps to get in on some stories you missed, and build your positions. And equally so, you have to be willing to take some profits along the way, which is another thing that I try to stress to people. These markets, I think this is a long-term gold bull market that's going to last years and years, but these markets are cyclical. There are ups and downs, and you want to take profits along the way, because the environment looks like one where you're going to be handed windfall profits over and over again through these investments, and managing that process is crucial. The selling part is as crucial really as the buying part.
Lots of good points there, Brien, with regards to the precious metals market. And I know gold has been in a bull market since 2018 when Powell tried to tighten. Then we had that 20% stock correction, and then gold has seemed to go up ever since. We've had a minor correction lately, but it's up from 1190 into the low 1900s right now. So it's been really good for the metals investors, though it seems as though the miners, for the most part, with the exception of maybe a couple of the majors, haven't really caught up to that bull market in gold. What's your view on the reasons for that? And do you suspect over the next year or two that the miners will catch up and then surpass even what we've seen in the actual physical market for gold?
Yeah, that's a great observation, Robert. And what happened in my view, if you look at it, since that March low, that big sell-off, we've had two $300 rallies, about $300 rallies in the gold price from each of those lows. We had one correction that began, I guess it was about mid-April through the end of June, but it wasn't really a correction. We corrected in terms of time rather than price. The price kind of traded in the range for a while. Then we had another big rally that ended in early August, and it looked like we were trading sideways again. And we, a couple of weeks ago, we had that big drop. So we finally did have a real correction. The lesson there is well, what happened as a process in that, especially the last $300 rally, is that the market really didn't believe that we had achieved a new price plateau, a new trading range, which right now is around $1,900 or thereabouts. And so they haven't applied those new prices, that new price level, to the fundamentals, to the analysis of the mining stocks that are actually producing gold. And that's going to be a process. It's going to take a while for the market to realize that, hey, we're going to be at these levels. This is a new plateau for gold and silver prices, and we have to start applying those to the valuations of the actual producers. What's going to happen, regardless of when the sentiment changes and they actually start doing that, we're going to have quarterlies where the earnings are just going to be stupendous for the mining companies, and then the market's going to have to factor that in. So I do think, as much as we like to play around in the junior sector, the mid-tier to major producers are actually a great area right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think maybe adding to that, some of the shutdowns that we had due to COVID may have affected, production, supply chains and things. So
and all that's coming back online. Yeah.
Yeah. So the gold price is going up, but we're not seeing those earnings necessarily. I think maybe, towards the end of the year, we'll have a full quarter of full production at these prices. And hopefully that will, bring about some better earnings and hopefully, help people to recognize the sector a little bit more. And I don't know what your feeling is. I think from your private interview that you had with Rick Rule and Brent Cook, for those of the people that are attending the conference, you give these very interesting and in-depth private interviews for conference attendees only. One of them was with Rick Rule and Brent Cook, and they were talking about how there's investment flooding into the sector. Do you believe that investment is going to raise the tide of the overall sector and get more production out there, or what is your view on how that's going right now?
Yeah, I think it is. For gold and silver in general, I think that I just get the sense that there's a strong undercurrent of demand, that a lot of big institutional money is out there that just is programmatically buying the metals on dips. Part of that was because it seemed like metals were very resilient and they weren't suffering severe or significant price breakdowns. Of course, we've seen that happen, but still, since we had that talk, but still, I do think that there is there is steady flow of investment into the metals because of the themes that we see going forward of continued monetary reflation. Now, that said, the miners themselves are going to benefit from that as well. I think there's more money coming into that sector, and I think production will eventually get expanded. One of the things that I believe I talked about in that call with Rick and Brent is that Rick and some other big players in the sector have been pushing for mining companies to gain some common sense, and prudency in this cycle, and not just spend money like drunken sailors. And my reply to everyone trying to get them to not spend money like drunken sailors is to shut the hell up. We want them to throw money around like drunken sailors because we're investing in a lot of these junior companies that we want them to buy. And another outgrowth, a repercussion of them all of a sudden showing these tremendous earnings and getting all of this cash in the burning holes in their pockets is, I think that's going to start the M&A process. Again, they're going to have to start increasing production, showing their new investors that they do have a growth curve, and they're going to have to go out there and buy some of these assets that have been proven up by the juniors. And, there's a good 6 to 10 named laundry list of projects out there that are going to be looked at by the majors. And I think that's a good area for people to look at for significant returns over the next couple of quarters.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to ask you about, getting away from the precious metals for a moment, but staying in the mining space, are there other areas of the commodity sector that you're invested in or that you have interest in, and maybe that people can find out more about at your conference?
Yeah, there always are. There's an evolution of these bull markets where it starts off in gold, then it goes into silver. And at least as far as the equities go, there's no such thing as a zinc bull market in junior equities. There's no such thing as a copper bull market. There's no such thing as anything else until there's an underlying gold bull market that brings speculative capital into the sector. And then people start looking at what's the next big story. We saw that in the 2000s where, there was a uranium mania. We saw it with rare earths. We saw it extend into the base metals, copper, zinc, et cetera, nickel. And I think all of those areas, all those sectors are going to have their day in the sun. And we're just starting to see that. We pointed out in Gold Newsletter a few months ago, actually, that if you look at some of the momentum indicators, copper was already in a bull market. And not only that, the broad commodity indices were already in bull markets. And nobody really talked about it. Nobody really realized it, but they're starting to realize it now. There is a compelling story for all of those sectors, and I think we're going to see those develop. I think copper is a great story right now. I think zinc and nickel are looking better right now. Uranium, of course, is going to be the big story of next year, and it has been for the last 6-7 years. So we don't know when that's going to start, but it is going to happen at some point as well. So yeah, I think that people who have spread their chips around a lot of the gold and silver juniors who are looking at new stories, earlier stories, they need to start looking at those sectors right now.
Yeah, I agree. And some of my own research indicates that when gold and silver do well, more money floods into the rest of the commodity sector as well. So as gold has done very well and silver's rebounded from, I think, $11 earlier this year, which was kind of absurd, fully expect people to get interested in the other commodities as well.
I agree. It's going to happen, and it's a wave you can get ahead of as a junior mining speculator.
Yeah. I want to ask you a question on politics because we have a big presidential election coming up here in a few weeks. Is it your view that this presidential election will have a big effect on markets? Is that something that your guests will be talking about during the conference?
Yes, they will be talking about it. We have our political panel where we have Tucker Carlson, who's going to be, a firebrand, and we have Stephen Moore, who's economic advisor to President Trump on there. And then because I can, and because it's fun, I threw a bomb into that panel by adding Doug Casey. So that's going to be a hoot. And it's the kind of thing that we like to do. And I think it's going to be very valuable. But I think it's going to have an effect, but I don't think that either candidate is either capable or willing to upset this juggernaut of central bank liquidity from going on. And I think, in fact, that if Trump gets elected, it may be a bit of a negative for the metals, because I think the market is right now expecting a Biden victory and seeing that even that tremendous largesse of central bank liquidity will get even larger under a Biden administration. And that's kind of the accepted view. Gold is not right now a hedge on uncertainty. It's a bet on certainty, and that bet being that we're going to continue to see this kind of stimulus, both from the central banks and administration. And anything that tends to look like it's going to upset that view is bearish for gold and silver.
Yeah, I agree. I do think the gold and silver market have priced in a little bit about who's going to win the presidential election. Of course, if Trump, gets back in, I agree with you. It could be like a sigh of relief for some people saying, okay, we're safe for another 4 years fiscally, which I'm not sure if that's the case, like you said, because of the central bank. But I do know that people put a lot of weight on the presidential election. I do think that would affect things. So those would be some interesting conversations at your conference. So people really should tune into that. Brien, if you would take a moment, I know that we're doing a virtual conference this year. Can you explain a little bit about how you're hosting that and what people will see there at the conference and how they can get engaged with your speakers?
Yeah, you know, I've looked at, fortunately, there have been some other virtual conferences before ours. Of course, ours is one of the few that's an actual paid event.
Hmm.
And my approach to that is the New Orleans event has always been very special. We've had a very loyal group of people who have come, and people who come one year, they come year after year because they realize how special it is, that kind of intellectual energy that you get at our event. And of course, it's a lot of fun to be in New Orleans. Um, and faced with the fact that we had to go virtual, I try to recreate some of that sense of community. And I try to take advantage of the virtual platform in that I could go out and bring a lot of these people from around the world. I wouldn't have to pay their airfare like I usually do, wouldn't have to pay their hotel accommodations, and they wouldn't have to climb on a plane and fly from around the world to come in.
Hmm.
And I was able to therefore assemble, I think, the, our best lineup ever as far as metals and mining equities, and get them together. Now, one of the things that a number of other conferences have done has been to pre-record sessions to
Hmm.
give them some insulation against bandwidth issues, connectivity issues, and have higher production quality and the like. In my view is that it's the immediacy of the information that's the most valuable. So we're doing everything live. So, you know, we're doing the high wire act without a net, as it were. So we are packing every day of presentation after presentation. But with that said, I'm telling people that don't worry if you can't make something, because every minute of it's going to be recorded. And for registrants, you're going to have access for that at least through the end of June. So months and months to come. And we're going to continue to provide you with private Zoom calls with leading experts, more panels, webinars, and company interviews as well throughout the months to come. So that's my attempt to try and change the business model from not just a one-time event, but a membership in a group that's going to get high value information, high value market intelligence ongoing for months to come.
Can you explain how people can attend the conference and how they go about becoming a part of it?
Well, they can go to our website, www.neworleansconference.com. And they're able to go there to register and get more information on the event. And we may have provided you with a link that you could use as well for your followers,
Hmm.
that gives them direct access to all of the information on the event. But otherwise, neworleansconference.com gives our full speaker lineup. And it is, again, an amazing lineup. And I urge everyone to take a look at it. You know, we're in an environment now where spending a few $100s to go to an event like this will pay for itself, or should pay for itself, many thousands of times over, because great ideas in the metals and mining sector are worth their weight in gold, pardon the pun, at this point, because they're actually going to work, because you can actually find investments that have a great shot of multiplying, you know, 5, 10 times over in price.
Yeah, I think the conference would do very well. This is really a sweet spot, especially for the precious metals
Mm.
investors. And like you said, getting in early on some of the other commodities, the energy commodities like uranium, rare earths, some of those other opportunities as well. Copper, I think you mentioned. So even if you want to broadly sprinkle your money around in different areas, I think it's a really, really good time to attend. I will definitely be there. I will be attending many of the exhibitor booths. So guys, definitely, if you're a subscriber of mine, please attend the conference, chat with me there. You can direct message me as well. I'd be happy to hang out and show you guys around the conference. Brien, any last words before we wrap up today?
No, it's just great being with you. And I do want to stress the continuing nature of this event. You know, right before we got on, I was talking or corresponding with somebody, and we're planning a special webinar on the lithium market for probably sometime in November. And that's, remember, getting the world's top experts together virtually for that as well. So it's just an example of the kinds of things we're really trying to deliver to people, and stress to them that when they come to this conference, they're not just attending a 4-day event. They, even though there's tremendous value in that, but they're joining a community of really serious investors who are going to take advantage of my network and the network of my friends gathered over decades in the industry. to bring value to them and exclusively to them that won't be available out there, won't be out on YouTube at any point in the future. So it's a chance to get in the room with the top experts.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you so much, Brien, for being on the program. Everybody, it's October 14th through 17th, New Orleans Investment Conference. Hope to see you there. Thank you so much, Brien.
Thank you.